The space station floated in the dark sky like a metal moon. Quiet and cold from the outside, but inside, it was alive with lights, machines, and strange beings walking down silver halls. There was one room, deep under the main deck, where no one stayed long. It was where the beast lived. Behind thick metal bars, chained and locked, stood something huge and dangerous. It was not just a pet, it was a monster, tall as 3 men. Covered in black fur with sharp silver claws and glowing red eyes. Its name was Zarnuk, and even the guards were scared to look at it too long. The only one who could go near it was the alien girl. Her name was Vexa, daughter of a powerful general, with cold eyes and long blue hair that floated like silk in low gravity. She never smiled, never laughed, and never let anyone near her pet. Zarnuk only listened to her, and many believe she had raised it from birth. Every morning, she came to the cage, touched the glass with her pale fingers, and whispered words in a strange language, and every morning, the beast calmed down, sat quietly, and waited for her to leave. But today, someone new arrived at the station, a young human boy named Leo, sent from Earth as a helper and cleaner. He was thin, curious, and not very strong, but his eyes were full of light and wonder. He was told to stay away from the lower deck, especially the cage, clean the hallways, the windows, the food rooms, but never the beast room, said the supervisor. Leo nodded. But his curiosity started to grow the more he heard about it. Later that night, when everyone was sleeping, Leo walked past the warning signs and down the cold metal stairs. He held a small mop and a bucket of warm water, humming to himself. When he reached the cage room, he froze. There it was, the monster he had only heard about in stories. Zarnuk was sleeping, chained, breathing slow and heavy like a giant engine. Even asleep, it looked powerful, deadly, and strange. But the floor was dirty, sticky with spilled fluid from a broken pipe. Leo looked at the cleaning list on his datapad. It clearly said, "Clean beast room." He sighed, crouched down, and began scrubbing the floor. He kept quiet, careful not to make noise, as he cleaned. He noticed something on the cage bars. Soap and suds had splashed onto the metal and even reached the beast's fur. A single bubble landed on Zarnuk's nose. The beast growled, eyes opening, glowing red in the dark. Leo froze, heart pounding, not sure whether to run or bow or play dead. Then, something even scarier happened. The door behind him hissed open, and Vexa stepped in. Her eyes locked onto the suds, then the beast, then Leo. Her face turned pale with rage. "What did you do?" she whispered, voice cold as ice. I was just cleaning," Leo said, standing up slowly. "You touched him?" she shouted, stepping closer. "You dare wash near Zarnuk?" "I didn't mean to," Leo said, holding up the mop like a shield. "I didn't know he was awake." Zarnuk growled again, chains rattling, but something was strange. The beast was not angry, not wild. It looked at Leo and didn't attack. Instead, it sniffed the air, tilted its head, and sat down calmly. Vexa's eyes widened, her anger turning into confusion. No one gets that close without bloodshed," she said. "Not even guards." Leo looked at the beast, then at her. "Maybe he just likes bubbles," he said, trying to joke. Zarnuk let out a low sound, something between a growl and a purr. Vexa stepped back, as if the floor had cracked under her. She had trained Zarnuk to attack anyone who touched him, but here stood a human boy, weak and unarmed, covered in soap. And the beast liked him. For the first time, Vexa didn't know what to say. She just stared at Leo, as if seeing something dangerous hiding behind his smile. She turned quickly and left without another word. Leo watched her go, then looked back at the beast. Zarnuk blinked slowly, then lay down, tail swishing like a lazy cat. Leo smiled and whispered, "Good boy." He didn't know what he had started, but deep inside the station, something had changed. The beast had made a choice, and so had she. Vexa couldn't sleep. She kept seeing that human boy in her mind, standing with a mop in one hand and soap bubbles clinging to his uniform. Zarnuk, her beast, had looked calm near him. Too calm, it made no sense. For years, Vexa had trained Zarnuk to destroy anything that came too close. Guards, prisoners, even other scientists, none of them could go near the cage without Zarnuk snapping. His jaws are roaring until the walls shook, but that boy, that soft, clueless boy, had washed the floor, splashed suds on the beast, and somehow left the room alive. More than alive, he had made Zarnuk purr. Vexa clenched her fists and paced in her chamber, her long fingers twitching with tension. He must have done something, some trick. Maybe human chemicals messed with the beast's mind, or maybe Zarnuk was getting sick, weak, losing his killer instincts. That thought frightened her more than anything. Zarnuk was the last of his kind, a creature bred for war, shaped in fire, sharpened in cages. If he softened now, he was no longer useful, no longer special, and neither was she. The next morning, Vexa found Leo in the hallway, pushing a cleaning cart and humming to himself again like nothing strange had happened. She stepped right in front of him, her boots clicking on the metal floor. He looked up and smiled. "Oh, hey, Vexa, right?" She didn't smile back, not even a twitch. "You were told not to go to the cage room," she said, voice low and cold. Leo scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, about that. The cleaning list said. I don't care what the list said." She snapped. "That place is off limits to humans, especially to janitors." Leo looked confused, then a little annoyed. "I was just doing my job, Your Highness, or whatever." Vexa narrowed her eyes. "Zarnuk should have ripped you in half." Leo gave a nervous laugh. "Well, he didn't. Maybe he's just misunderstood." "You don't understand anything," she hissed, leaning closer. "That creature is not a pet, he is death in a cage." Leo looked into her eyes. Not angry, not scared, just curious. "Then why does he listen to you?" Vexa froze. No one had ever asked her that, not even her own people. "Because I trained him," she said sharply. "Because he trusts me." Leo nodded slowly. "Then maybe he can trust more than one person." Before she could reply, a nearby alert buzzed from the wall, a new cleaning task for Leo Beast Room. Again, he looked at her, then at the blinking screen, and said, "Guess I'll be seeing your buddy again." "Don't go near him," she said, her voice lower now, almost a whisper. "Not this time." Leo gave her a small shrug. "I'll just clean the floor, nothing more." She watched him walk away, and something deep in her chest twisted. She wasn't sure if it was anger, fear, or something else. Zarnuk waited behind the cage, eyes glowing. In the dark again, Leo entered quietly, no mop this time. Just a cloth and a spray bottle. He nodded at the beast like greeting an old friend. Zarnuk blinked slowly and made a soft sound, not a growl, not a roar, but something new. Leo knelt and began wiping the floor, careful not to splash this time. He spoke to the beast like it was a person, telling stories about Earth, about birds and mountains and something called pizza. Zarnuk listened, tail slowly swaying side to side. From the hallway, Vexa watched through a small hidden screen, her heart pounding faster with every second. She felt like the floor beneath her was shifting, like reality itself was changing. Zarnuk, her war beast, was bonding with a human, and the human wasn't afraid. He didn't flinch, didn't run, didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he treated the monster like a friend. Vexa turned off the screen and leaned back against the wall. She had seen enough. Something was happening, something she didn't understand. Zarnuk was choosing, and if that was true, then her place beside him was no longer guaranteed. The station lights flickered. A strange energy pulsed through the lower decks, as if the air itself was holding its breath. In the beast chamber, something was different. Zarnuk paced slowly in his cage, eyes glowing softer than usual, like dying stars in a dark sky. Leo returned with a small bucket of warm water, but this time, he brought something else too, a soft sponge shaped like a smiling sun. He had found it in the supply closet, clearly meant for cleaning delicate surfaces, but he thought it looked funny. He held it up to Zarnuk, chuckling. "You like this?" It's got a face like you almost. Zarnok tilted his massive head, then gently tapped the sponge with one claw, not tearing it, just curious. Leo took that as a yes, and dipped the sponge in water and a bit of gentle soap. As he reached through the bars and lightly dabbed Zarnok's front paw, the unexpected happened. Zarnok sat down, closed his eyes, and let him, not a growl, not a twitch, just silence. It felt like the room was holding a secret above them. Hidden vents carried silent alarms to the control room. Vexa had ordered new motion sensors after Leo's last visit, and now every move was being tracked. She stood in front of the screen. Again, arms crossed tightly, watching her beast being pampered like a spoiled pet. Her face was hard, but her eyes flickered with something sharp, something dangerous. She didn't press the alarm button, not yet. She needed to understand what was happening first. Leo continued washing Zarnok, gently brushing away layers of dry blood and dust from old battles. As he wiped near the beast's neck, he saw something that didn't belong, a strange mark beneath the fur. Glowing slightly under the soap, he leaned closer, squinting. Is that writing? Zarnok opened his eyes slowly, almost like he understood the question. The symbol was old, strange, not any language Leo had seen, but something about it felt familiar, like a memory he never had. Leo touched the symbol lightly, and in that moment, the air changed. A shockwave pulsed from Zarnok's body, not enough to harm, but enough to knock Leo back. Alarms flashed red, doors sealed shut, and the station lights dimmed. Leo coughed and stood up quickly, confused. What the hell was that? Zarnok stood too, growling not at Leo, but at the walls, the lights, the sounds from the hall. Vexa was already running, her boots slamming against the floor like gunfire. She reached the chamber just as the last lock fell into place behind her, trapping them all inside. She saw Leo standing, chest heaving, holding the glowing sponge like a weapon. She saw Zarnok pacing, growling, his fur now marked with ancient glowing patterns. And she saw the writing, the one Leo had uncovered. Her face turned pale, her voice cracked. That symbol is not supposed to be seen. Leo looked at her, confused. What does it mean? It's forbiddance, she whispered. It's from before the wars. Before the stars were ours. Zarnok let out a loud roar that shook the cage walls. But it was not a sound of anger, it was a call from every speaker across the station. That same pulse echoed, low and deep, like an ancient voice waking up. Guards shouted on the radios, lights flickered again, and strange patterns danced on the floor. Something old had been touched. And now, it wanted to be known. Leo looked around, heart racing. Did I break something? Vexa didn't answer. She only stared at Zarnok, who was now staring directly at her. She stepped forward, placing a hand on the glass, whispering in that old tongue again. But this time, Zarnok didn't listen. Instead, he turned to Leo and let out a softer sound, one that made Vex's heart drop. That sound. It was the sound he used only with her, when he was calm, when he trusted. Now he was using it on him. Vexa backed away slowly, her breath uneven. The beast had chosen, and the symbol meant only one thing. Leo was now part of something ancient. Something dangerous. The walls began to shake again, and the cage locks unlatched with loud metallic clicks. Zarnok stepped forward, free for the first time in years. Leo froze, expecting to be crushed or eaten. But instead, Zarnok walked past him and stood between him and Vexa like a silent shield. The beast looked back once, as if saying, "You're mine now," and Leo, with shaking hands, nodded. He didn't understand what was happening, but somehow, he knew this was just the beginning. Something had woken up, and now it could not be stopped. Vexa had never seen Zarnok walk like that before. Not with rage, not with hunger, but with purpose, calm and proud, like a king returning to his lost throne. She stood frozen as the massive beast walked past her, his heavy footsteps echoing like thunder in her bones. And behind him, Leo stood with wide eyes, unsure if he should follow or run. The locks had broken, the cage was open, but no one screamed, no one died. The monster was free but peaceful, and somehow that made it even scarier. Guards rushed through the upper halls, voices shouting in different languages, commands flying between comms and control panels. "Contain the breach," someone yelled. "Beast has escaped Section 12 compromised." But when they reached the room, they didn't find blood or destruction. They found Zarnak sitting silently in the middle of the floor, eyes closed, Leo beside him, gently resting a hand on the beast's shoulder. No one dared to shoot. No one dared to speak first. Even the captain of the guard hesitated, his finger trembling near the trigger. Vexa stepped forward, her voice firm but shaken. "Stand down, all of you." The guards looked at her, confused. "Ma'am, he's loose." "I know," she said. "But he's not hostile," one brave soldier whispered. "Why is it obeying the human?" That question spread through the room like a spark, burning holes into years of training. Leo looked at all of them and raised both hands slowly. "I didn't do anything. I just gave him a bath." Zarnak opened his eyes and gave a low rumble. Not angry, not loud, just a warning. Everyone took one step back. Vexa stared at Leo again, her mind racing with old legends, old science, forgotten theories. There were stories once, before the war machines, before the star fleets, stories of creatures that could bond with other species, not with control, not with force, but with choice. But those stories were called myths. Lies made for children. Zarnak wasn't supposed to choose. He was bred to obey one master and only her. But now, he sat beside a human, calm and loyal. Vex's voice cracked slightly. "He chose you." Leo looked down at Zarnak, then at her. "I didn't ask him to." "You didn't have to," she said. "He felt it." Silence fell again as Vexa slowly stepped closer to the beast. Watching its reaction, Zarnak did not growl, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. Watching every move, she reached out her hand, trembling, and placed it lightly on Zarnak's head. For a moment, she thought he would pull away. But he didn't, he allowed her touch, but not like before. It wasn't command anymore. It was permission. The power had shifted. She looked at Leo with something she had never shown another human before, not hatred, not fear, but deep, raw confusion. "Do you even understand what this means?" she asked. "No," Leo said honestly, "but I don't think I need to yet." Later, in a quiet room away from the others, Vexa sat across from Leo, a thick data pad between them. She showed him ancient symbols, ones older than most languages. In the galaxy, one of them was the same mark Leo had seen glowing on Zarnak's skin. "This means unbound," she explained. "It's a sign of awakening, of freedom." "Then why was it hidden?" he asked. "Because freedom is dangerous," she replied, "especially when it chooses its own path." Leo looked down. "So what happens now?" Vexa leaned back, the hard edge in her voice softening. "Now? The station council will panic. They'll want to take Zarnak apart, study him, maybe kill him." Leo clenched his fists. "I won't let that happen." Zarnak was more than just a beast now, more than a mystery. He was a friend, a protector, and something else Leo couldn't describe. "You'll need to leave," Vexa said finally. "Get him out of here before they trap him again." Leo looked at her in surprise. "You're helping me?" "I don't know why," she whispered. "Maybe I'm just tired of being the master." She stood and walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. "He doesn't belong in a cage anymore. Neither do you." The stars outside the station seemed to blink slower that night, as if the universe itself was watching. Leo sat on the edge of his bunk, holding the cleaning sponge in his hands like it was made of gold. It had dried now, stiff and useless, but he couldn't throw it away. It was the first thing that made Zarnak trust him, the first crack in the wall between beast and boy. But now that wall had fallen, and something strange was standing in its place. Leo didn't sleep, he just kept replaying the moment when Zarnak had looked at him, not as prey, not as a threat, but like a brother in the dark. He felt something buzz under his shirt. He reached into his collar and pulled out a tiny piece of cloth he had torn from Zarnak's fur during the bath. It was glowing, faint blue light pulsed from it, not bright enough to see from far, but alive like a heartbeat. He held it close to his chest. And suddenly, images flashed in his mind, not memories, not dreams, something else. He saw ancient cities made of crystal and stone, beasts walking beside people, glowing marks on their skin matching symbols in the sky. He saw battles, betrayal, chains and cages, and then he saw himself standing beside Zarnok, while the stars behind them burned in strange colors. Leo gasped, dropping the cloth, his breath shaking. The glow faded instantly. But the images stayed burned into his brain, somewhere in the silence. Zarnok growled from his sleep, not angry, just aware, as if he had seen the same things. The next morning, Vexa waited for Leo outside the beast chamber, her arms crossed, eyes heavy with shadows. "You felt it, didn't you?" she asked without greeting. Leo didn't answer at first, he just nodded slowly. "What is it?" "Memory," she said. "Not yours, not mine. Zarnok's." Leo stared at her. "Beasts can remember the past like that." Vexa looked down the hallway before answering. "Zarnok is not just a beast." She pulled out a small data crystal and slid it into the wall panel, showing an old recording, one almost erased from the station archives. It showed a planet, long gone, torn apart by war. On that planet were creatures just like Zarnok, walking freely, glowing with the same marks. They lived with humanoids, not as pets, but as equals, as partners. But then came the fleets, the bombs. The hunters, they were too strong, Vexa whispered. So we caged them. Broke their minds, made them forget. Leo swallowed hard. But Zarnok didn't forget everything. "No," she said. "And you woke something in him." Leo looked at her, voice low. "Then what am I?" Vexa met his eyes, and for the first time she looked afraid. "I think you were chosen," she said. "Long before you came here, outside the station." Strange signals had begun to appear. Old probes left on the edges of forgotten systems were picking up patterns, light pulses, gravity shifts, echoing sounds in ancient tongues. One message kept repeating, hidden in waves of static: "He is awake." The council called emergency meetings, suspicious eyes turning toward Vexa and Leo. They wanted to separate Zarnok, put him back in chains, erase the incident, erase the threat. But the beast would not allow it. When they tried to bring electric rods into his chamber, Zarnok let out a roar that shattered 3 armored windows and knocked 2 soldiers unconscious. He didn't hurt Leo, didn't even look at him. He just stood between the boy and the weapons. Guards stopped, too scared to move. Leo stepped forward and placed a hand on the beast's side. Whispering softly, "It's okay," Zarnok growled low, then calmed. As if Leo's voice alone could hold back the storm, Vexa watched from behind the glass, whispering to herself, "This is no longer just about the past." In a hidden part of the station, old machines began to power up for the first time in years, triggered by ancient codes buried in Zarnok's DNA, and from deep space, other signals answered. More like him, more of the lost ones were waking up. Leo didn't know yet, but he had become more than a cleaner, more than a boy who loved soap and water. He had become the key to something sleeping far too long. And now, the galaxy was listening. Asterisk. The station wasn't quiet anymore. For years, it had drifted in orbit like a lonely satellite, a forgotten checkpoint between distant trade routes. But now, strange ships were appearing outside its borders, unregistered, silent, glowing with markings no one could read. Inside, the council members shouted over each other in a locked chamber, their voices full of fear. "All because of that human boy," one said. "And that beast. They've triggered something ancient." Another whispered, "Something we buried for a reason." They ordered security to prepare for war, but no one dared enter the beast chamber again. Not after what happened last time. Zarnok had made his message clear. He would not go back. In the cage, Vexa stood outside the chamber, watching Leo through the glass. He was sitting beside the beast again, softly talking, like he always did. He didn't look like a warrior or a threat. But Zarnok listened to his every word, his tail flicking gently with each sound. That made him dangerous not because of power, but because of influence. Vexa opened the door slowly and stepped inside. Unarmed, unafraid, Leo glanced up, offering a tired smile. Any new yelling from the council? They're terrified, she said. You've become the storm they don't understand. Leo ran a hand through his messy hair. I didn't ask for any of this. No, she said. But Zarnok did. Before Leo could answer, the walls shook, just once deep and low like a heartbeat. Vexa looked at the ceiling, then at Zarnok, who suddenly stood tall and alert. Ears raised, nose sniffing the air, another pulse came, louder, followed by a soft rumble outside the station. Zarnok growled not with fear, but with recognition. They're here, Vexa whispered. More of them. The view screens across. The station flickered to life without command, showing dark ships circling slowly, releasing pods toward the outer decks. Each pod opened in silence. And from them stepped creatures like Zarnok, different sizes, different colors, but with the same glowing marks on their skin. Beasts long believed extinct, now walking through the metal halls like they belonged there. The guards backed away, some dropping their weapons, unsure whether to defend or kneel. One beast walked up to the control gate and stared through the glass at Leo. Its eyes were pale white, its body covered in silver fur with golden lines glowing along its sides. It didn't speak, but it bowed, slow and deep. Leo stood up slowly, heart pounding. Why are they bowing to me? Vexa stepped beside him, her voice quieter than ever. Because the marks on Zarnok match your voice, your touch, your presence. Leo shook his head. That makes no sense. It's not science, she said. It's history, buried deep in blood and memory. The new beasts began to gather around Zarnok, circling him without fear. They touched noses, shared breath, then turned toward Leo, as if waiting. Leo swallowed, his hands trembling. They think I'm their leader? Vexa nodded. You're not their master, Leo, she said. You're their link, the echo they've waited for. Leo looked at them, then at Zarnok, then back at her. What do I do now? Vexa didn't answer right away. She reached into her coat and pulled out a worn device with a blinking red light. If you stay, she said, the council will call the fleets and blood will fill this station. Leo stared at the blinking light, knowing what it meant. If I leave? He asked, voice dry. Then you take them with you, she said. You disappear before war begins. Zarnok stepped beside him, brushing against his arm gently. The beasts all stared, silent and ready. Leo took a deep breath, looking one last time around the station he once cleaned with soap and sponge. He never thought he would leave it like this. He never thought he would matter. But now, he wasn't just a boy with a mop, he was a signal, he was the spark, and the ancient ones had come to follow. The launch bay lights turned red. Warning alarms echoed softly in the distance. Not loud, not urgent, just a quiet reminder that time was running out. Leo stood at the edge of the hangar platform, his hand resting on Zarnok's thick fur, his eyes fixed on the dark ships waiting just beyond the force field. Behind him, the station felt colder than ever. Vexa arrived without guards, without orders, her steps slow, her face unreadable. She didn't speak right away, just stood beside him, watching the others, the beasts who had once been caged, now free and standing tall. You don't have to go, she said at last. Leo gave a soft laugh. If I stay, this place becomes a battlefield. I know, she said quietly. But I had to offer. Zarnok let out a low hum, pressing his head gently into Leo's shoulder. He didn't growl anymore. He didn't need to. His loyalty had already been spoken in silence. More ships began to arrive in orbit, not war fleets. Not merchants, but old vessels, strange and quiet, as if pulled by the same invisible voice. They didn't open fire. They just hovered, waiting. Leo looked at Vexa, eyes tired but strong. You could come too. She shook her head. This is my prison, even if the doors are open. Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out the tiny dried sponge, still shaped like a smiling sun. he placed it in her hand. This was the start, he said. Not the chains, not the history, this. Vexa looked down at the sponge, then at him. You're not a warrior, Leo. No, he said. But I think I'm something else now. One of the elder beasts stepped forward, covered in glowing blue scars, its eyes cloudy with age. It bowed to Leo, then turned and walked onto the ship. Others followed, one by one. As if drawn by instinct, Leo turned to Zarnuk. You ready, buddy? Zarnuk gave a soft grunt and walked ahead, leading the way. No chains, no commands, just freedom. Vexa stepped back, watching them board the strange ship. The engines lit up with soft golden light. Not fire, not metal, something older, something alive. As the ship rose into space, the other vessels followed, forming a slow-moving trail across the stars. A message was sent from the station to every listening satellite. The message said nothing, but the sight said everything. The beasts were no longer lost. They had found their voice, and that voice came from a human. In the silence of the command deck, Vexa stood alone, staring out at the stars. A guard approached quietly. Should we mark him as missing, ma'am? She shook her head, eyes still on the trail of ships fading into deep space. No. She said, mark him as returned. Far beyond the station, in a place no map had touched, Leo sat beside Zarnuk, watching strange lights drift by the windows. He didn't know where they were going, or what they would find, but he knew this was right, for the first time. In his life he didn't feel small, he felt chosen, and beside him, a creature once feared by all now rested like a loyal guardian. Not a pet, not a monster family. The past had awakened, and the future had followed, and all because one human saw dirt, reached for soap, and made the beast clean again.